Will you pray with me? Lord, Mother, Father, God, please give me the words that your people need to hear today. Please bless the message that I've come with today. Please fill this room and all the people within it with your love and with your understanding. In your many names we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So the words that jumped out of me in the gospel reading was love your enemies. Why? God, why should I do that? It's so counterintuitive. Won't my enemies perceive it as weakness? We all know about the enemy. Whoever the enemy is, they are unrelenting, unforgiving, and evil. Why should I give love where I'll be mocked for my efforts? Because you said so? Okay. Love your enemy. Give more than what's asked of you. Do more than a tax collector. Tax collectors were pretty much despised in Jesus' time. So when they're saying that we should do more than a tax collector, that's really a burn. That's a jab, you know? So, of course, Jesus dined with the tax collector. The message in our second reading seems pretty clear. But the purpose, if we can suppose a purpose, it's hard to fathom. What foundation are we building with this love of enemies? Why should we spread our finite affections towards those who have no intention of reciprocating? So let's look at and see why we should do this absurd thing. First, who is the enemy? I think today we use the word too much. A lot of times we say enemy when we really mean competitor. We say enemy when we're really talking about somebody that's trying to achieve the same goal that we want. We're in competition, but that's not the enemy. The enemy is somebody that is directly opposing who we are, that wish us ill, wish us violence, wish negative things upon us. Tom Brady, and I don't like Tom Brady, but he's not the enemy of our beloved Seahawks. He's an opponent. You see the difference. So, trying to deliberately, so why should we love someone like that? Why should we love the enemy? In Psalm 23:5, it is said, God will prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Okay, now I have to have dinner? So, I picture a white tablecloth, candles, silver. Of course, I'd be looking fabulous, darling. Perhaps there'd be a French-sounding waiter asking about the wine selections. At the table would be who? Me and Vladimir Putin? Me and Chairman Mao? Me and the leader of Al-Qaeda? Me and President Trump? Soft music, great food, maybe a few too many glasses of wine. Why would I do that? Why should I do that? If my dinner date was President Trump, would it be grabby with those little hands? Okay, probably not with me. So what's the lesson there? Why is this so important to God? The first reading talks about Jesus being the strong foundation of our church and of ourselves. And Paul says he's like a master builder, adding to the building started by Jesus. And that's what we're all supposed to do. We're supposed to build on the foundation that Jesus laid within us. But then he turns around and says that we're not supposed to be wise the way the world wise. We're supposed to look at this situation like a fool. Build like a fool. Now, I've built buildings before. That seems ludicrous. We're not supposed to be smart. I admit I've taken a lot of pride in the past and kind of in the present for being intelligent. But what is this? What is this about that we're supposed to look at the world as if a fool and not be wise in the way of the world. I think God's trying to say that we need to change our paradigm. We need to change the way we're looking at our world. And that really jives into what we're talking about loving our enemy. God always looks at things differently than we do. We tend to look at our situation as a zero sum. And I said that earlier. Why should I give my finite amount of love to the enemy? And as if I would be denying my family. But love is not finite. If we help our adversaries and we give to our adversaries what's left for us, well, love is infinite. And God looks at it that way. God doesn't do math the way we do math. God sees abundance where we see little. God took the loaves and the fishes and he fed the multitude. God is also really, really understanding of human nature. Just because a person is our enemy now does not mean that that person will continue to be our enemy. It doesn't mean that that person won't change.
That's right.
It is difficult to stay angry at someone who's generous towards you. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but I've tried to be mad at my spouse when all she returned was love. And my anger, my upset melted like butter in a hot pan. There was just no anger left because I saw her love and anger couldn't stand. Well, people everywhere are that way. In kindness, couldn't we not soften the hearts that are hardened against us? Throughout history, there are examples of former enemies who are now our friends. On the national stage, England was our enemy. Germany was our enemy. Japan was our enemy. We fought 2 wars against Germany. In truth, we fought 2 wars against Britain, too. And now all those countries are our friends. I had an experience when I was in the Navy where I served under an officer who I absolutely hated. He was so cruel to me and to my fellows, the other guys that were on the ship with me, the other women on the ship. I could not stand him. He was just brutal, a tyrant. But always I was respectful. Always I tried to be kind. Oh, in truth, a lot of that had to do with not getting in trouble. But I met him years later. My wife and I were looking for a house. He was the salesman. And he remembered our time together totally different than I remembered the time together. And I realized that when I was kind to him, when I was respectful to him, it mattered. Because that's what he remembered about the relationship that he and I had. And he was a great person. And it was hard. I had to completely reassess who this person was in my head. I had to completely change my mind. All of us can do that. So, by being kind, hearts can soften. Oh, and the other thing, of course, is I didn't have the guy out to dinner. But by being kind, hearts can soften. Our situation can change for the better. And that is one reason why we should love our enemies. So here's the other. Often, we only see the worst of our enemies. That has always been true. We look at the Hun. We look at the barbarians at the gate. We look at the Republicans. And all we see is this faceless, inhuman mass of loathing. We cannot see them for the complex humans that they all are. We deliberately depersonalize those people that we make our enemies. We deliberately create this straw man image of our enemy. And we hold that up and we impose upon it the very worst characteristics of our enemy and ignore all the good things that could exist in that person. We ignore them. We don't look at that. We don't see that. We deny that. Because it's much easier to yell and taunt at the scarecrow and ignore the real person. Our fangs come out and we show our ugly. Have any of you guys ever done that? I know I have. During the first Gulf War, I was pretty pissed at Iraq. Okay, I bought in on all the propaganda. And I pretty much thought of the Iraqi people the way servicemen in all wars tend to seem to dehumanize the enemy. I used ugly terms, racist comments. I did. And I was wrong. Because those are not the people. That was a clear image of the people that we were fighting. I'd created a straw image because it made it easier to think of the bombs that we were dropping, the guns that were firing, and the people that were dying. It's easier to look at death when you think of those that are dying as not human. It was wrong. It was completely and utterly wrong to look at that. It was a failure in my own character at that time, but I've learned from it. Back in the Revolutionary War days, the British did that with us. And they came up with a song meant to be an insult to Americans. See, back then they had a style. They'd wear these fancy hats, tri-corner hats, and they put these complex feather arrangements on it. And that style had a name. It's called macaroni. Some of you are laughing. You already know where I'm going. So they came up with this funny song to make fun of us country bumpkins fighting them in America. And they sang, Yankee Doodle went to town, riding on a pony. He stuck a feather in a hat and called it macaroni. School kids all along have misunderstood what that song was about. But it was all about trying to dehumanize us. Our enemies do the same thing to us that we do to them. But us doing that is not leading the life that God has for us. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to see the complex in our opponents. We're supposed to see the human being that is arrayed against us. And in doing that, not only have we, by showing our love to our enemies, softened their hearts, but we're softening our own hearts by accepting that complex. Now, maybe they're still the enemy. Lord knows a lot of the things that Trump does I don't like. But if you think about it, early in this sermon, I was doing the exact same thing when I joked about his small hands and grabby nature. I was creating a straw man of somebody that I have to admit says at least that he wants to balance the budget. He wants our country's defense to be strong. I'm sure there's some good things that he's doing. And if I could wade through all the filth and vitriol, maybe I could find it. I still probably won't like him very much. But I will acknowledge that he's a human being. And I won't say the horrible things that hurt me about the president. Because when it comes down to it, what I'm doing isn't just hurting him and hurting us and hurting our country, but I'm hurting myself with those kind of negative stereotypes. I'm not talking about relaxing principles, and I'm certainly not talking about agreeing with a lot of what he does, but I'm talking about keeping the love of Jesus in our heart, keeping the love of humanity and the love of our enemies true. Okay, so there's another aspect to this that I would like to talk about. How many of you have ever heard somebody tell you that you are your own worst enemy? I hear some laughter. I know I've heard it. You are your own worst enemy, Megan. If you would just, okay, change. I get it. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about being your own worst enemy. As I grew up learning a worldview that was pretty anti-LGBT. I mean, I grew up in an evangelical church, conservative family, messed up family, but conservative. They say that, every happy family is happy in the same way. Every unhappy family is unhappy in their own special little way. And mine was. So I grew up in that community. I didn't understand who I was. And as I came to start to understand who I was, I didn't like that person. I didn't want to be. I didn't want to accept. And I was at war with myself. All of us, probably at one time or another, have been at war with ourselves. You finally see that person that you really are. And you say, oh, no. Oh, no. I can't be that person. I can't accept that person. But it's true. It's who you are. And until you call a ceasefire in that war and learn to love the enemy within you, learn to embrace your own complexity, your own diversity, your own failures, your own struggles, your own humanity. Until you do that, you can never find peace within your own soul. Never mind peace with your enemies outside. So that, I think, is an also very important message when it comes to loving your enemies. Loving your enemies within. So, will you please say with me, I love myself.
I love myself.
Exactly as I am.
Exactly as I am.
As a flawed creation of a perfect God.
As a flawed creation of a perfect God.
As a beautiful work in progress.
As a beautiful work in progress.
Thank you. This body, this church is imperfect. As everybody's imperfect. But together we're making a beautiful and amazing community. On a solid foundation of Jesus. But on a solid foundation of love. Love for each other. Love for our community. Love for ourselves. Love for God. And yes, love for our enemies. This thing, to accept the complex of our enemies, to recognize the complex in ourselves, that, I think, is the message in the passage with God. That's a message that I hope I can internalize, and I hope that you guys can internalize as well. Thank you. Amen.